A strange clue has been hiding in ancient graves for decades. Again and again, archaeologists uncovered skeletons that seemed to tell the wrong story. These people lived without supermarkets, without modern medicine, without electricity, without even the most basic comforts we take for granted. Yet many of them were surprisingly tall, in some places, taller than the people who came thousands of years after them. That doesn't make sense. History is supposed to move forward. Technology improves, knowledge grows, life gets easier. So, why would some ancient humans living in conditions that seem unimaginably harsh grow taller than the descendants who inherited civilization itself? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Genetics. Case closed. But if genetics were the whole story, archaeologists wouldn't have discovered something far stranger. Because in many regions, human height didn't steadily increase over time. It went up, then down, then up again. Almost as if the human body was responding to something invisible, something hidden. And to find it, we have to travel back to a world before farms, before cities, and before civilization changed the human body forever. Imagine dawn breaking across an open grassland. A hunting party moves through the mist. Children wake beside a campfire. A family packs its belongings. By sunset, they may be miles away. This was the world of hunter-gatherers. For most of human history, people didn't live in permanent settlements. They moved, constantly, following seasons, following animals, following opportunity. Life was difficult, but there was something unusual about the food they ate. It came from many different sources: fish from rivers, meat from animals, fruits, nuts, roots, wild plants. Different landscapes provided different nutrients. Different seasons provided different foods. And that variety may hold one of the first clues. But before we solve that mystery, another question appears. If hunter-gatherers were so healthy, why did humans ever abandon that lifestyle? After all, farming created civilization. Surely that was an improvement, right? In many ways, it was. But hidden inside one of humanity's greatest achievements was a biological surprise few people expect. Around 12,000 years ago, agriculture began spreading across different parts of the world. Fields replaced wilderness, villages became towns, populations exploded. For the first time, humans could produce enormous amounts of food from relatively small areas. It was a revolution, and revolutions usually sound like progress. Yet when researchers examined skeletons from some early farming communities, they noticed something unexpected. Many of those farmers were shorter than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. Wait, what? The people with more food were sometimes shorter? How could that be? The answer wasn't quantity, it was quality. A hunter-gatherer might eat dozens of different foods throughout the year. An early farmer often depended heavily on just a few crops. Wheat, rice, corn, calories increased, but nutritional variety sometimes decreased. And suddenly the mystery becomes much bigger than height. Because height is not simply a genetic trait, it's also a biological report card. Every child's body is constantly gathering information. How much food is available? How nutritious is it? How much disease is present? How much stress exists? The body takes all of that information and makes decisions, including how much energy can be invested in growth. And then comes another twist. Food wasn't the only thing changing. Look closer at an early farming village. Animals live nearby. Waste accumulates. People sleep close together. Population density rises dramatically. For the first time in human history, large groups are packed into the same space every day. That creates an invisible enemy: disease. Researchers studying ancient remains have found evidence that many early agricultural societies faced greater disease burdens than the mobile hunter-gatherers before them. And disease is expensive. Not financially, biologically. Every infection forces the body to redirect energy. Energy that could have built bone, built muscle, built height. Instead, that energy is spent surviving. The body begins making trade-offs. Stay alive first, grow later, or sometimes grow less. And now a pattern starts emerging. The answer was never hiding in one thing. Not food, not genes, not disease, but the interaction between all of them. Yet Even that isn't the deepest layer of the mystery, because something fascinating happened thousands of years later. Height started increasing again. In many modern populations, average height began rising dramatically. Why? Did human genes suddenly improve? Not really. The change happened far too quickly. Instead, nutrition improved, public health improved, childhood disease declined, living conditions became safer, and the human body responded, almost immediately. Researchers have observed this pattern repeatedly across different countries and time periods. When childhood conditions improve, height often follows, which reveals something extraordinary. The human body is listening, listening every single day, listening to food, listening to stress, listening to illness, listening to the environment. Height is not merely inherited, it is partly negotiated, a conversation between biology and experience. And suddenly, those ancient skeletons start looking very different because they aren't just bones, they're messages. Messages from childhoods that ended thousands of years ago. A tall skeleton tells us something happened. Enough food, enough nutrition, enough health, enough stability. Not perfect conditions, but conditions that allowed growth. And perhaps that's why archaeologists care so much about height, because height isn't really about being tall. It's about understanding the quality of life hidden behind the bones. The mystery was never, why were ancient humans tall? The real mystery was, what kind of world allowed them to become tall? And once you ask that question, something unexpected happens. The story stops being about ancient humans. It becomes about us. Because modern people are still living inside the same biological system. Our bodies are still listening to nutrition, to stress, to health, to the environment around us. The conversation never ended. It only changed. Which means those ancient skeletons are not relics from a disconnected past. They're mirrors, a reminder that the human body has always been recording the world it lives in. And maybe that's the final twist hidden inside this entire mystery. When archaeologists uncover a skeleton, they aren't simply measuring a person's height. They're measuring the life that person experienced, the food they found, the diseases they survived, the environment that shaped them, the opportunities their body was given. Every bone becomes evidence. Every skeleton becomes a biography. And the next time you hear that some ancient humans were surprisingly tall, remember this. The remarkable thing isn't that they grew tall. The remarkable thing is that thousands of years later, the human body is still telling the same story. A story written not only in our genes, but in the world we create around ourselves.